Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Hardwood Nation podcast with your boy CL Anthony and my main man, Bryce Ward. Bryce, we had some shit happen last night. The
hmm
Indiana Pacers blew an 18-point lead at home to the Boston Celtics. What were your initial thoughts on that final with the Celtics being up 3 games to 0 right now?
And I thought this was as good as it's going to get for Indiana, considering Hallie is out, and they blew one of the only chances they had to get a game in this series. So um, it was already going to be tough for them with Halliburton. With Halliburton, I pretty much counted them out. So they almost stole a game, which you hope the team can get you a game in one of these series without your star. That's pretty tough. But they were about to pull it off, and they kind of blew it in spectacular fashion late. So yeah, the Celtics are getting a nice, easy walk into the finals from this postseason. And real quick, that intro still says Flagrant 2 on it, if you didn't notice.
That's fine. We've already taken care of that, sir. We've
Okay.
already taken
I'm just
care of
saying,
that.
it's still on there, so I didn't
Yeah,
know if you
it's
noticed,
it's it's been on there for 4 years.
but
So,
no, I mean,
um,
Indiana blew it, and I mean, I didn't really think they had a legit chance to beat Boston in this series. I thought it would go 6 games, maybe, but I thought Boston would be in control, and um, last night would have been a big surprise game, but like I said, Indiana kind of blew that late, and yeah, I mean they're pretty much dead in the water.
so there's a couple things I want to dig into about this series. You hit the nail on the head though, because even Boston Celtics great, but General Asshole Paul Pearson said this is the easiest run that he's seen a Boston team is easy. He's like, we've been lucky. So,
hmm
um, technically speaking, Indiana should be up 2 games to 1 in this series. Jalen Brown saved
hmm
Boston's season in game one when he hit the three to send that game to overtime. I don't give a fuck what Jason Tatum did in overtime. If Jalen Brown wouldn't have hit that off balance corner three, the Pacers would have took game one. Okay, fine. Boston takes game two. If Indiana wouldn't have blew an 18-point lead in the final minutes of that game yesterday, let's say Halliburton played, Indiana's probably winning that game. They would
hmm
be up two
hmm
games to one. And I think that changes the conversation a little bit, not for us, but for these Boston Celtics dick writers. It changes the conversation a little bit because I don't necessarily think Boston comes out of this series if everything works right for both teams. Um, but I do want to give a shout out to Al Horford. 7 threes last night. How on God's green earth does Al Horford keep getting open? So that's definitely an issue that Indiana had last night because every one of those threes mattered. Um, and then I also want to talk about the Jalen Brown conversation. Of course, he sent the game in overtime in game one, dropped 40 points in game two. I've always said he's the best two-way player on the team. Has your mind changed at all on Jalen Brown doing this series?
Um, not really. I have a lot of respect for Jalen Brown. You've never really
Mhm.
heard slander for Jalen Brown coming out of my mouth. He just hasn't gotten quite the accolades for whatever reason that Tatum has, especially when it comes to. It seems like they're quick to blame him when things go bad, but not quick
Mhm.
to give him the accolades when the team is winning. All that seems to go to Tatum. It's almost like a bad social situation, I guess you could call it, for Brown compared to Tatum in Boston, even though when you think of one, you pretty much think of the other as well. Like last year, they tried to clown, Brown on not being able to go left. That was the thing, remember? And
Right.
but no, I mean he steps up in a lot of ways to where this team wouldn't be where it is at all without Jalen Brown. And like you said, that clutch shot that probably saved game one. Those things are big momentum and morale type shifters. in a series shot like that. And so, but Brown's always been that guy in my eyes. That 1-2 punch between him and Tatum is extremely tough because of how good Brown can be and how much he can go off. So honestly, I'm happy for Brown because he does seem to get a lot of slander when things are bad. So out of what's going on there, the Boston's playoff run so far, Jaylen Brown's been a bright spot for sure, if not the brightest
Right.
spot.
Absolutely. Um, it baffles me. Well, I mean, I know why, but it baffles me that he doesn't get the run that he should. But I'm happy that he's standing out now um, in this playoff run. I just can't wrap my mind around Indiana being up 2 games to 1 with home court advantage because we were a minute away. If you combine the end of game 1 and the end of game 3, we're technically a minute away from the Indiana Pacers being up 2 games to 1 with
I
home
also
court,
though
which is
real quick
wild.
because of that, because of quote unquote like Boston having a quote unquote easy run thus far, I do think it's going to come back and bite them in the finals. Where
Hmm.
I think whoever Boston plays in the finals they're going to lose to
Can deep dive
because of
into
this
that next.
easiness. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because they haven't been pushed yet. Yeah. Um, so we're gonna deep dive into that because something that I've been begging to happen may just happen, and I'm gonna have to shut my mouth. Absolutely. Um, after going up 2 games to 0 against Denver at Denver, now Minnesota finds themselves in the reverse situation because your boy Luca has stolen the first 2 home games from the Minnesota Timberwolves. Initial thoughts on this?
Um, there's an overarching thought that goes back to us pretty much talking shit about when Dallas acquired Kyrie Irving
Yeah.
because I don't think Luca does this by himself, obviously. And just like the Jaylen Brown conversation, I don't think we can understate how important and how well Kyrie Irving has come in and made it so that they don't feel like they're trading off as much. They both feel like they're playing a team style basketball. And when Kyrie is locked in, I don't know if there's a better finisher slash scorer in the NBA period because he can hit you from all three levels. And like I said just now, finishing wise, Kyrie's one of the best I think we've ever seen. And so with all the distractions seemingly out of the way, with the team seemingly gelling right now, I don't think we can say enough about Kyrie Irving as well because the 1-2 punch between the two is just seemingly devastating when they're both on. Um, a lot of people were saying, getting hyped for the Wolves, and rightfully so with the way they were playing, but everybody was saying they were built to beat Denver. They got beat by Denver before, they came back, the right mentality, the right exact players that they wanted to have against Denver. Even Jokic said, they're built to beat us. Well, you load it up and you beat the defending champs in round two. And you would think that'd be enough because of how good Denver's looked the last year and a half, couple years. But the 1-2 punch and just some of those extra guys hitting shots, Dallas is playing on another level right now. I mean, we've seen glimpses and we've seen what they can be throughout the regular season, but I didn't really know what to expect come playoff time. Like I knew they'd be good, but I didn't know exactly how good they could be. And I don't think the Wolves have an answer for them. I don't think for as built as they were to handle Denver, this is a different machine. And I think we see some of the maturity and the growing lessons that we thought Denver or Minnesota was going to have against Denver again, possibly. We're seeing that adversity in this series. and I think Dallas comes out on top.
I as proud as I was of Minnesota to beat Denver in that game 7 in Denver, I didn't like the post game with Cat and Anthony Edwards at the post game, just giggling and time
Mm,
like little girls and shit. No, I didn't like that. Like you won a second round matchup. Yes, you beat the defending champions, but you won a second round matchup. You're just halfway there. I didn't like it. And mentally, I think they checked out a little bit once they beat Denver, and I understand we're humans. I understand how you can do that. Hey, I beat the best team in basketball. We can just walk into this next series. And now Dallas slapped the shit out of them twice.
mm,
Minnesota has to win game 3, but not only do they have to win game 3 in Dallas, it has to be a blowout. Like they can't have a close game and lose that to Dallas. They have to put some kind of fear into Dallas because right now Dallas has absolutely no fear. Yeah, they barely lost game 2. Luka hit that incredible three. I get it, but they have to. You remember, let's go back 2 weeks when I told you after that 45-point loss, I don't see where Denver can come back and win this series.
mm.
Minnesota has to beat Dallas like that. They have to give them a drumming to kind of sway this a little bit. Because outside of that, Dallas is showing no fear. Um, Looks like Luka's going to finally get to the place that I've been begging him to get to for 3 years now. Um, yeah, they're getting steamrolled, man.
Now,
I can't
for
even
all the
explain it.
love, this is what I'm wondering, because a lot of NBA fans have blinders on, right? Anthony Edwards, darling of the playoffs so far, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Do you know what he's done game 1 and 2 against Dallas?
His shooting percentage is in the tank. Yeah,
It's garbage. And
yeah.
I think a big reason for that is have you seen the paint touches he's gotten or the drives?
I have not. I have not.
It's almost as much as he was getting per game in the Denver series. They've basically taken his drives away and he's
Mhm,
only jump shooting
mhm,
and he's not hitting that. So all the momentum and the way the Timberwolves seem to play offense, which is basically just get out and run, they've been able to take that away, and they've been able to take away Ant's drives, and
mhm.
um, they've been able to protect the paint appropriately. And I don't think the Timberwolves, because outside of that, I think you're relying on your role players, and then you really need Towns to step up in a big way. And I
Yeah.
just don't know if the Wolves have enough weapons right now to come back 0-2 in the style that they're going to have to against Dallas. Because for them to take Ant's driving and his main scoring option away, that's a big deal. And so far he's been almost a non-factor in games 1 and 2. And so for as much, and I'm an Anthony Edwards fan. For as much praise as we were giving him, how we like to shit on Tatum or even Luca for not being able to will their teams when it matters most. This is a learning lesson for Ant, because I don't see the Wolves coming back in this series. I see you know I don't know how many different options the Wolves have if Ant can't get into the paint, and if his
Yeah.
jump shot's not falling. Um, I just don't see the Wolves coming back in this series. With as bad as Anthony has been so far, he can still have good games, but being so bad in those first two home games, I think it's too little, too late at this point. I think you blew it already.
That stat that you dropped was great, and it's also indicative of what he said after game 1 when he was like, he's tired. Everyone's tired now. Everyone's injured now. Um, so I don't
You
want to
know,
hear
you
that.
know that made me think. I used to, while I was watching him, I go, "Wow, how amazing to watch one of your best player, get buckets, but on the defensive end, wanting to guard the best player, like wanting to get after it on the defensive end. And
Mhm.
yes, you do want that mentality, but I wonder in a long play. in the course of the playoffs after a long season, I almost wonder if it's best to have some of that broken up where, yes, you do want your best player to have that mentality and to want to guard the other team's best player. Or see, with Dallas, is different because you have two amazing ball handlers. So there's not a good,
Right.
oh, let me rest on
Right.
the other guard. There's none of that. So Ant
Right.
is being asked to do a lot on both ends of the floor. And I just don't know if he's got enough left in the tank to really do that. And I used
Oh,
to
he's
think,
getting
wow, it's
torched on
just so
defense.
nice to watch your best player get after it on the defensive end. But it almost makes me wonder if it's best to have, your defensive specialists and then have just your best player, not, of course not take possessions off kind of thing, but not be your best player on both ends just because the grind is going to get to them. I mean, I watched Jalen Suggs put his body on the line nonstop, and I just couldn't imagine him having enough left to go out and still score and stuff if that was the case for him too. So I just I just wonder if Minnesota has the personnel to deal with Dallas, and I don't think they do because I think Ant's a little too tired to do what he has to do as well.
That's why players like Jaylen Brown are so special
Hmm.
and Jimmy Butler are so special because they take on both roles every night and predominantly in a great way. Now, Boston does have Drew Holiday, so when let's say Jaylen Brown does need a break, you can put Drew Holiday on
And
the
Jimmy
best player,
Butler has
but
Bam.
right, but you know who we're not mentioning, which is Jason Tatum because he doesn't play defense at all. Um, no, you're right. One, because I'm an old head, if you're in your 20s, you shouldn't be tired. That's just me. Mike Conley, if he says he's tired, I can go with that. Al
Right.
Horford at the 7 threes, if he says he's tired,
Mhm.
God damn it, take Al out the game. If you're under 26, I don't want to hear about you being tired in the NBA. I don't care. I don't want to hear it. That's just me being old school. So since beating Denver, Minnesota has done absolutely nothing right. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, Luca may do it.
Well, the
Luca,
exciting thing
Luca
with
may do
Denver
it.
losing was, and look, I picked Denver. I picked Denver all season.
Yeah.
And I heard someone else the other day say, there's a difference between saying you want to be right, and he stole it from someone else, and saying you want to get it right. You know,
Mhm.
I got no problem being wrong. I didn't think Denver was going to lose, and once Denver lost, I
Mhm.
go, oh well, Minnesota's got to be the favorites now.
Right.
Uh, but no matter what, someone with Denver being out, someone's going to get their first championship this year, and that's very
Mhm.
exciting. And someone's going to be a young player, no matter what, or youngish.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it very well could be Dallas's year. I'm leaning more towards that now than anything, and I wouldn't have picked that at the beginning of the playoffs, of course. But like I said
Right. Right.
earlier, I don't. I have to see it from Boston before they have to convince me. Whereas I believe who's coming out of the West is going to win a championship. So right now, it's
Yeah.
like I'm really leaning towards Kyrie winning his second championship and Luka getting his first, and then that's going to change some conversations going into next season. But right now, it really feels like Dallas has all the momentum, and they're my
Yeah.
favorites now to win the whole thing, not just the West, but the whole thing.
So let's just say, hypothetically speaking, Dallas goes to the finals and they win the whole thing. It changes the career trajectory of Jason Kidd as a head coach. You got to
Hmm.
take him serious now.
Yeah,
Kyrie's a made man anyway, so I'm not going to even speak on that. He's a made man.
it solidifies his legacy.
But as far as Luca, now you have to put him into the conversation of one of the all-time great players in the NBA because this is really the only thing holding him back. He has the numbers argument by far, but this is the only thing holding him back for the old heads. So it does put him in that conversation.
Also, I'll say this:
Um,
he wins a championship this year. Next year, he's MVP.
nah, I mean it's
I
too
know,
early
I
for that
know,
right
I know
now.
the two aren't
Uh,
necessarily correlated, but
yeah,
um, Luka puts up some amazing stats, and he's right there in that MVP conversation. I
Yeah.
definitely feel like these playoffs are going to linger in the minds of voters next season.
Oh, he's going to be all over the TV next year. I will say that. He's going to
Hmm.
get a shitload of more of endorsements and stuff. I do want to take two minutes, just 2 minutes. Since our last recording, the Indiana Pacers went into Madison Square Garden and beat the New York Knicks on an absolute disgusting television telecast by ESPN. They ought to be ashamed of themselves. ESPN and ABC ought to be ashamed of themselves. That whole 3 hour block of TV was dedicated to the Knicks winning. I mean, it was gross how the coverage was for New York. Okay, um, and I felt bad because they spent the entire morning pumping the Knicks up, thinking the Knicks were going to go to the conference finals, and then Indiana went in there and won the game. Um, I feel bad for the New York Knicks fans. I really do. And you've never heard me say that before. But I got pumped up watching ESPN do this fucking bullshit, and then they lay the egg. And I know there's a couple of injuries and whatnot. Jalen Brunson got hurt in the fourth quarter, but the game was already over with by then. Um, how shocked were you that the Knicks and Denver dropped Game 7 at home?
I'm way more shocked at Denver. I'm,
Okay.
that really um, made me rethink a lot of my opinions. I'm like, oh, I can't get nothing right. But I'd be willing to bet a lot of people were more in the same boat with that than the Knicks
Yeah.
Pacers. Pacers showed fight. The Knicks
Mhm.
have been beat up for months, and then the cherry on top was Brunson as well. But like you said, a lot of that game was already over. I mean, I like to say, especially for smaller market teams, if you want to win, if you want to
Mhm.
get far, you have to be undeniable. And the Pacers shooting that game was undeniable. There's nothing anybody was going to do.
67%.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy.
67. I think it was
So,
67.1% or some shit like that. I've never seen that before.
but
That was
what I
like a
want to
playoff
ask
record.
you is more so than the Lakers, more so than Boston, almost more so than what I've seen in a lot of sports. The hype around the Knicks, when they even have a glimmer of hope, is insane. The media attention is insane. The stars' attendance to the games is a little insane. And I don't even know if I remember this kind of hype around Lakers teams. And it's just for the first time. I mean, I know there's always a lot of attention on New York, whether they're good or not, but this season has been a little eye-opening for me, to be honest, to see the amount of attention it seems like that the Knicks get just when anything is going their way. And so I what when like Linsanity popped off all those years ago, right? I was like, okay, this is kitschy. It's like it's a feel good story, right? No. I mean it is, but I'm just saying the way the Nick fandom is, man, and the amount of media that they get and the amount of leeway they get. A lot of it has to do with, I think, because of the market, obviously, the amount of fans they have. Their fans travel too because New Yorkers want to relocate everywhere else that's not freezing cold. I get it, but they have a good, strong base, and I just didn't quite realize. I thought it was like maybe on par with Lakers and the other big teams, but to me this year, I found it's bigger. It's way bigger than any other team in my opinion, and so for a second, I did want to feel bad for the Knicks fans. But after seeing how the league bends over for them, I go back to my initial reaction when it comes to New York teams, and they can go fuck themselves because of how they get the attention they do. And I get it. Like I said, you're in New York, you're in one of the biggest cities in the world, so you have those fans going for you. But watching the media and watching
Yeah, it was gross.
everybody else also bend over for him. No, thank you. No,
Yeah.
thank you. And I think unless you're a Knicks fan, yeah, the injuries suck, but everybody else is rooting for you to lose. So it was the Pacers won. They deserve to be there. Nothing taken away from the New York players. Those
Hmm.
guys played hard. They deserved everything they have. It's the fan base and the media that puts a bad taste in your mouth. So I got nothing bad to say about Brunson and those guys. They played their hearts out. Indiana was just better in this series, and Indiana's been tough the whole playoffs, but I think they come up short. But yeah, the Knicks coverage is is gross. It's
Yeah,
very.
that's what I text my boys in New York right before the game. After watching like an hour of pregame, I'm like, "This is disgusting. This is absolute." They let Stephen A. Smith run roughshod through that network, and I'm like, "This is fucking gross." I will say this on New York, and then we'll go into our last topic. If they move Julius Randle in the offseason, depending on what they get back, New York's going to be in the Eastern Conference Finals next year. I will say that. The NBA is better when the Knicks are good, as you saw.
Mhm.
just from just from a coverage standpoint, the NBA is better. Um, the Knicks is the NBA's home team, which I know a lot of people don't agree with that, but it is God honest truth. The NBA is based in New York, so
Yeah.
it's their home team. Okay, all they got to do is walk down the street and knock on the door and be like, "Adam Silver, we got to talk." That's literally all they got to do.
I'll say this too in their defense: if Brunson was healthy, as a non-fan of Boston and New York and Indiana, I would have rather seen New York Boston.
I
If
wanted
Brunson,
New York, Boston. Yeah,
I wanted to see that happen. So
yeah.
take that for what it's worth.
And that says how I feel about Boston. If I actually admit that I wanted the Knicks to beat
Hmm.
Boston, I needed that. Okay. God, I hate Boston so
Well,
much.
we don't believe in Boston that way. They're a good
No.
team, but I don't believe in them as an NBA champion this year. And I'll say this: with all the teams that are left, Tatum by far has the most to lose by not winning now.
Oh, everyone's saying that this week. They're like, this is Boston's. Obviously, this is
Yeah.
Boston here. So
Hmm.
if he doesn't pull it off this year, it's just like, what the fuck are you gonna do? But
It's not
so
good.
so really quick, we always said all year Boston has to win it this year, and that's even with Denver alive and with everyone else alive. But now it's even been amped up a little more that Boston has to pull it out this year. We just can't take them serious. Y'all are gonna be a great regular season team, get to the playoffs and do shit. Because again, 1 minute away, the Pacers will be up 2-1
Mhm.
with home court. Um, so my last topic, which is kind of near and dear to my heart because I always hate this topic, the Cleveland Cavaliers, who've had the winning record for the last 4 years, ran into the best team in the Eastern Conference on paper as far as Boston with their record. Bryce, they fired their coach this year. Why on earth does these teams continue to fire coaches with winning records? I will never understand it because if they're doing that to keep their star player, it won't work. We saw Philly do this last year. They fired Doc Rivers because James Harden didn't like him. James Harden still left. And what was Philly's playoff result this year? Same shit as usual, right? With a new coach. So I don't understand what the fuck Cleveland is doing because they were building something nice there. Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland. Now there's talks that those two really don't want to play with each other anymore for whatever reason. Who would you go with out of one of those two players?
Um, there's this is a complicated answer
Okay.
because of everything you just brought up. Um, the mistake was a few years ago trading for Donovan Mitchell. That was the issue. Do you remember the reputation of that Cavs team before they brought on Mitchell? Defense and how hard they played.
Hmm.
Right. They were a younger team. Donovan, Darius Garland. They also had Sexton, but Garland
Yeah,
was
it's
the
Sexton
younger
down there.
guard coming up.
Right.
Had a great season. First time All Star. I believe they stunted his growth
Mm,
by bringing in Mitchell. They changed their style a little bit, especially on offense, because it was almost like just give Mitchell a ball, get out of the way.
right.
And I'm not saying Mitchell brought a different attitude to the locker room, but I definitely think he somewhat killed a bit of the culture that they had. Because where the Orlando Magic are at and how much I've got to watch them, to see them build the culture and the growth that they've had with their young players and their young coach. And also, there's a tie there because Bickerstaff, that's who Mosley used to work for, and they're really good friends. So I see some similarities there. But when you traded for Mitchell, you change the trajectory of the expectations on your team, and you immediately go to a team that's under the clock because you're fighting to do something with the time that you have Mitchell. And the beginning idea is you might only have him for borrowed time because he was on his way to someplace else when you nabbed him. That was
Mhm.
his goal, to go to a different team, as we all know. Cleveland took him, and now you see Cleveland scrambling because they traded in the culture and the heart of their team, in a sense, for a win now star mentality, and they couldn't win. I would argue it wasn't the coach's fault, obviously, but I would say he wasn't prepared as a coach to be in this situation as early as he was with Mitchell. So I think it's a bit of a bad mix that the management put on the team. They're not going to take the fall for this. They're not going to blame Mitchell because nobody blames stars anymore. Because, especially, and I know Cleveland's had a championship, they've had LeBron James, but they're more of a small market team compared to the
Yeah.
big dogs. And I think when you're a small market team, I know for a fact you scramble to keep your stars happy, whether or not it's the best basketball decision. And so I think Cleveland messed up when they traded for Mitchell. They put themselves on the clock. They put themselves on the chopping block in terms of having to make a decision. And because of the way the power that stars have now, I think it's a lot easier for management, whether it's right or wrong, which I think we're seeing more and more. It's leaning towards wrong. I think it's easier to fire the coach, especially a coach without a ton of clout, despite the fact that he's won, despite that since he's been there, I think he's one of the most winningest coaches or the most winningest coach in
Yeah.
Cleveland
One of
history.
it. One
Yeah.
of them. Yeah.
So I think the management put themselves in a bad position by trading for Mitchell a couple of seasons ago. I think that was the beginning of their problems. And I think other teams can take a nice up and young coming teams. For all the fans that want teams to make their big splash trade, and the Magic are going to be there this summer, and it's not always the right move to bring in the big time player. You put a lot of pressure on your team to win now. You put a lot of stress on your coaching staff, and when it's a young coaching staff, it's a recipe for disaster. And I think you change the culture of your team. And depending on what that culture is, it's okay for the Lakers a little bit. It's okay for even New York a little bit because there's already this culture in those cities around these teams. But you throw that into a small market team, and the fit just isn't as right. And it puts a lot of pressure in the rest of those guys. Most of them are younger. They're not built for this yet. And I think Cleveland sticks with Mitchell. I think both Garland and Jared Allen could be on the move. And it's nothing against Jared Allen, but if you listen to any of these Cavs podcasts, there's two things that they bash, or there's a few things that they bash with Bickerstaff. It was one, his inability to do anything else on offense once if Mitchell wasn't going off. It was that Garland's potential has been stunted a little bit, and it's Mobley being misused as a four instead of where a lot of Cavs commentators or pundits and fans think he should be the five. And so I think there's a bad mix of two different spots there where fans don't think Mitchell and Garland can work together anymore, and I don't think they believe that Mobley's potential can be realized playing next to Allen.
Yeah.
So there's a few different player choices, not just the Mitchell and Garland that they're going to have to make, but they've already used their trump card for this season in terms of blaming and firing the coach. So when it doesn't work
Right.
again, more there's going to have to be more people that are moved, and
Yeah.
all of this stems from them trying to keep Donovan Mitchell, which, to be honest, I get why you want Mitchell, um, but going so far to keep a small guard who hasn't yet won by himself, it seems like a lot to be auctioning off for just trying to hold on to Mitchell. And he's great. I just don't know if it was the right move. And
No,
I think we're seeing Cleveland get into their desperate mode, and I think it's only going to get worse.
it was absolutely the wrong move considering he didn't want to be there to begin with. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, it was New York for a little while, where he's from. It was Miami for a little while, but he figured out he didn't want to play with Jimmy Butler. That's on Mitchell. But I want to read this fucking statement because it's absolute bullshit. JB Bickerstaff has been around the NBA his entire life. His father coached two great teams. Did they win championships? No. But he coached two great teams in the history of the NBA. One of those teams was the first team to be an 8 seed to beat a 1 seed in the Denver Nuggets years ago when they upset the Seattle Supersonics, okay? So this is this bullshit statement from because you know me, I'm gonna call people out from the Cavaliers president of basketball operations, Kobe Altman. Okay, JB is a well respected NBA coach and an incredible human being. Over the past 4 years, he helped establish a culture that progressively drove players to become the best versions of themselves. Decisions like these are never easy, particularly when you look back at where the franchise rebuild started under his leadership. The NBA is a unique business that sometimes require aggressive risk taking to move a franchise forward and ultimately compete for championships. We owe a ton of gratitude for everything JB has contributed to the Cavaliers and his engagement in the Cleveland community. We wish JB, his wife, and their three children the best in their future endeavors. That is fucking bullshit. Kobe Altman is a piece of shit. And here's why I say that. If you're going to fire the man for lack of whatever, have that in your bullshit statement. This, you're sitting here sucking his dick, but you still fired the man and he doesn't have a job. When he did not bring Donovan Mitchell to Cleveland, he did not team up Jared Allen with the four. Okay, he didn't do any of that. They just hired him to coach the fucking team. So you're right. They made a desperate move to fire the coach. That's their trump card. That's it. JB Biggerstaff didn't put this team together. And I hate when GMs do this. It drives me fucking insane. You build a team, you build it flawedly, then you bring in the coach to coach it, but then it's the coach's fault when what you put together doesn't work. So it's like make it make sense. It pisses me the fuck off.
Is
It
this
really
more
does.
egregious than the New Orleans situation years ago? I think that
Oof.
one bothered you more, or just
Oh
as much.
man, just as much because it's just like I'm blessed to like the franchise that I like. I'm blessed to have the
Mhm.
coach that I have. But even Eric Spoelstra's not perfect. Sometimes Eric does things that I'm scratching my head with, like, what the fuck are you doing? But Eric has the undeniable, unequivocal support of that front office. When you have that, you have leeway to continue to build, just like with the Magic. So, for example, no shots taken. For example, next season, the Magic get back to the playoffs. Next season, the Magic get to the second round. And then the Magic come out and fire that coach and release some bullshit like this. How would you feel? Like honest opinions. How would you feel?
Oh, I'd be upset.
Cleveland
I'd
was
be
what
very
the top.
upset.
They were the third. Forgive me.
I
They were the
would be
fourth seed.
upset. I would be upset if you brought a star here and we didn't live up to the expectations and you still fired Mosley. I would be upset
Right.
because right now, to be honest, I have more loyalty to what Mosley's coming there to build because I've
Right.
seen him change the culture of my team.
Right. And the first year was rocky. The first year was rocky, and he got through it. And that's why I'm looking at this and I'm reading this fucking statement, and I'm like, these guys is pieces of shit. Because to be perfectly clear, Donovan Mitchell was not going to bring a championship to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Let's just be realistic. When you had teams like Boston, you had teams like Miami, a couple of years ago, and Philly, Cleveland couldn't be any one of those teams. Like, it's not the coach's fault. This is not the coach's fault. And that's why I'm just so pissed off about it. Because I'm just like, Cleveland was building something nice. And when the Cavaliers went to Donovan Mitchell 3 times this year and said, sign this extension, and he said no. So now they're panicking by firing the coach. Garland's people have said they're probably not going to re-sign with Cleveland if Cleveland re-signs Donovan Mitchell. So now you have that issue. It's not the coach's fault. Kobe
Now, what do you
Altman.
think about? There's been since this, there's been more details coming out about the locker room, and I don't know the reasoning why, but I mean, it seems to be more than one player, and we know the main star player. If he wants you back, you're probably coming back. So we know it probably starts with Mitchell, but the rumors is that he lost that locker room. That he lost a lot of faith back when they decided, and this wasn't his fault either. Apparently, the players weren't happy that they threw that game against Charlotte, and they weren't exactly happy with how he. Apparently, the rumor is he would run practices pretty hard. So
Oh, oh, oh,
I know,
oh,
I know. So
oh,
the
oh,
rumors
oh.
are that the players weren't happy with some of the decisions he was making, and the rumors was that he lost that locker room.
If he threw a game, and I don't even remember that, so let me be clear on that.
This
If
was at the end of the
he,
season. They were playing Charlotte, and once they found
uh,
out they were going to get Orlando, they pulled the starters
to
in
rest
like
him,
the
right?
third or fourth quarter. They pulled the starters and threw the rest of the game. They didn't
Okay,
say they threw the game, but
right? No, of course.
everybody thought they threw that game to get Orlando.
Yeah. So you rested your starters to get a potentially easier matchup, which Orlando gave them hell in 7 games. Let's be clear on that. But you rested your starters, who also complained about you being too hard because you come from an old school coach. Fuck them
Hmm.
and fuck that GM. I'm serious. I'm so upset
Hmm.
about this. And it's just like I can't even put into words how upset I am about this bullshit in this situation.
I wish you were a Cavs fan so you could argue with some of these guys because a lot of what I hear from Cavs pundits, and it seems like they reflect some of the fans' opinions. That I guess they're caught up in the Donovan Mitchell train and the way they talked about Bickerstaff. I only heard a few pundits basically defending him, but not being like he's for sure the choice. And so you
who
have
isn't?
one side that are defending him, but not really
Right.
standing up saying he deserves to keep the job, just that maybe he didn't deserve to be fired yet. But then most of the other people were kind of down on how he's coached the team, especially in the playoffs, especially on the offensive side. Like that just seems to be the biggest criticisms I've seen from more than one person. So even amongst fans and pundits, I think there was a respect for Biggerstaff, but I don't think they wanted him back either. I mean,
You won your
I'm not
first.
saying it's right or wrong for the team. I'm just saying that was the general tone that I've been getting from the Cavs fan base is that they don't really believe in Bickerstaff to take this team as far as they think the team should go.
The team is not a championship team. It was
Yeah.
constructed wrong. It was not me and you, of course, but Cleveland, hear me. You have to have realistic expectations. You are not a championship team. You are a second round playoff team, which ironically that's where you went and where you lost that. So you might be knocking on the door to the conference finals, but you have to make personnel changes on the roster. You don't have to make a coaching change right now. Who the fuck do you want? Frank Vogel? You want him to coach your fucking team?
Yeah, because Budenholzer's all locked up
Yeah,
in Phoenix.
Bullhose was in Phoenix, and that's going to be another fucking disaster. Thank you, Phoenix, because you're giving us content for next year. But who the fuck else are you going to get? Phil Jackson? He's damn near 80. He's not coming out of retirement. Larry Brown? Who the fuck are you going to get now? Some new fucking coach that you have to start all over again, and you're going to have the same fucking result. Look at Philly. Yeah, Nick Nurse is a championship coach. You fired Doc Rivers. Look at fucking Philly now. Same goddamn situation. Look at Milwaukee. You fire Mike Budenholzer. Yeah, he was a piece of shit and an idiot. You bring in Adrian Griffin first. Then you bring in Doc Rivers, and you get the same fucking result. Like,
There's too many names. There's too many names.
I don't understand it. I don't. So we're gonna wrap it up. Cause I can literally keep going on this for an hour, but we're gonna wrap it up. Please like, subscribe, and share our content. Drop comments below. Tell us if you agree with all these bullshit ass changes. Tell us how you feel. We want to hear it. We always respond. Everyone, stay safe, and we are